Let me begin by noting that in sharing this story, I've chosen to use random names for the individuals involved to make it easier for everyone to follow along. The real names have been withheld to protect their privacy and identities. This is a true account that came to my attention through a fellow priest in the Archdiocese of Boston, one that underscores the subtle ways evil can infiltrate our lives, often through the things we hold dear, like music or ambition. As an exorcist appointed by the Church, I've dealt with many cases of demonic oppression and possession over the years, and this one reminds us that the devil doesn't always announce himself with thunder and lightning. Sometimes he whispers through the notes of a song. It all started back in the fall of 2008 in Boston, Massachusetts. The city was alive with the energy of college students pouring back into town for the new semester, the streets buzzing with street performers, and the crisp air carrying the sounds of buskers strumming guitars or belting out tunes on the corners. Amid all that, there was a young man named Liam Donovan, a 22-year-old music student from Ireland who had immigrated to the United States a couple of years earlier. Liam was studying vocal performance at Boston University, living in a rundown apartment building on Commonwealth Avenue, right in the heart of the student district. It was one of those old brick walk-ups with creaky wooden floors and thin walls that let every sound from the neighbors bleed through. He shared the place with his girlfriend, Sophia, who was 21 and studying fine arts at a nearby college, and his best friend, Declan, a 23-year-old amateur guitarist who'd come over from Ireland with him. Liam was a striking fellow, tall and lanky, with a mop of unruly dark hair that always seemed windswept, even indoors, and a strong tenor voice that could fill a room. He had that classic Irish charm, a bit brooding at times, but with a passion for opera that burned bright. His dream was to make it big as an opera singer, performing on stages like the Met in New York or La Scala in Milan. But deep down, he carried this nagging insecurity about his talent. You see, back in Dublin, when he was still a teenager, he'd entered a major singing competition and got eliminated early. It crushed him, left him questioning if he really had what it took. To make ends meet, he sang in the choir at Street Cecilia's church, a beautiful old Catholic parish not far from campus. It wasn't glamorous, mostly hymns and sacred music during Mass, but it paid a little and gave him a sense of purpose. Sophia, with her bright blue eyes and artistic soul, would often sketch portraits of him while he practiced, capturing the way his face lit up when he hit those high notes. And Declan, always the joker of the group, would pull out his guitar for impromptu jam sessions in the living room, turning their cramped space into a makeshift stage. Life was pretty ordinary for them at first classes during the day, late-night study sessions fueled by cheap coffee, and weekends exploring the city. Boston in the fall is something special, with the leaves turning shades of red and gold along the Charles River, and the air smelling of roasted chestnuts from street vendors. Liam would walk to his classes, humming arias under his breath, dreaming of the day he'd land a breakthrough role. But then, one crisp afternoon in October, everything shifted. Liam was wandering through Back Bay, that upscale neighborhood with its Victorian brownstones and boutique shops. He stopped into an old used bookstore, the kind with dusty shelves stacked floor to ceiling with forgotten tomes. Tucked away in a corner, he found this antique music book, a leather-bound notebook with cracked covers, filled with handwritten sheet music in faded red ink. The shop owner said it dated back to the 19th century, supposedly belonging to some obscure European opera singer. Liam, always on the hunt for unique scores to practice, bought it for a steal, maybe 20 bucks or so. He brought it home that evening, excited like a kid with a new toy. Sophia was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of pasta sauce, and Declan was lounging on the couch, strumming random chords. Liam flipped open the book at the dining table, his fingers tracing the elegant script of the notes. There was this one aria in particular that caught his eye, something unfamiliar, with sweeping melodies that seemed to leap off the page. He cleared his throat and started singing it right there in the apartment just to test it out. And folks, that's when things got strange. His voice, it resonated in a way it never had before. It was fuller, richer, echoing off the walls with a power that made the cheap lampshade vibrate. Sophia poked her head in from the kitchen, her eyes wide. "Liam, that was incredible," she said, setting down her spoon. Declan stopped playing and nodded vigorously. "Mate, you've got to enter that in the next recital. That's star material." Liam felt a rush of confidence, but that night, as he lay in bed beside Sophia, sleep didn't come easy. He drifted off eventually, only to be pulled into a vivid dream, or what felt like one. In it, he was standing on a vast, shadowy stage, the audience a sea of indistinct faces. As he sang the aria from the book, his voice soared, but then it blended with another sound, a low, guttural whisper that seemed to come from the darkness beyond the footlights. "I will give you the voice of an angel," the whisper said, "but you must sing for hell." Liam jolted awake in a cold sweat, his heart pounding. He dismissed it as nerves, maybe too much caffeine before bed, but deep down it unsettled him. The next day, he took the book to his practice room at the university, a small, soundproof booth with a piano and a mirror. He sang the aria again, and once more his voice transformed. It wasn't just louder, it had this ethereal quality, hitting notes with precision and emotion he'd only dreamed of. Passersby in the hallway stopped to listen, peeking through the window with impressed smiles. Over the following weeks, Liam incorporated pieces from the book into his repertoire. His performances at school recitals drew standing ovations, and word spread quickly. Professors who had overlooked him before now praised his natural gift. He even got an invitation to audition for a local opera production, something that would have seemed impossible just months earlier. But with the success came subtle changes. The book, which he kept on his nightstand, started behaving oddly. Pages would flip open on their own during the night, revealing new notations that hadn't been there before, strange, dissonant melodies written in that same red ink, as if freshly penned. Liam would wake to the sound of faint whispering in his ears, urging him to sing louder, to drown out the voice of God. At first, he thought it was his imagination, perhaps stress from the upcoming auditions. But the whispers grew insistent, feeding his ego. He began snapping at Declan during their jam sessions, criticizing his guitar playing as amateurish and holding him back. With Sophia, jealousy crept in. Her paintings were being selected for a student exhibition, and he'd make snide remarks about how her art was child's play compared to his vocal prowess. One evening, during choir practice at Street Cecilia's, the oppression revealed itself more fully. The church was dimly lit, with the scent of incense lingering from evening mass. Liam was in the loft with the other singers, running through a familiar hymn. Midway through, he felt a sudden stiffness in his body, like an invisible hand gripping his throat. His mouth opened, but the voice that emerged wasn't entirely his own. It was distorted, deeper, laced with an otherworldly timbre. "I am Abraxas," it proclaimed, echoing through the nave, the balancer of light and darkness. The other choir members froze, exchanging uneasy glances. Abraxas, as I've studied in ancient Gnostic texts and biblical apocrypha, is a demonic entity often depicted as a fusion of good and evil, a fallen angel who once served as the heavenly musician but envied the divine song of God himself. Cast out for his pride, Abraxas seeks vessels among the talented, using their voices to sow chaos through sound, turning harmony into discord, beauty into blasphemy. Through Liam, Abraxas began to narrate its origins, speaking in a voice that made the stained glass windows rattle slightly. It claimed to have been the conductor of celestial choirs, but in its jealousy, it attempted to overpower the Lord's own melody, leading to its expulsion. Now it wandered, latching onto artists and musicians, promising fame in exchange for their souls. That antique book, it wasn't just a relic. It was a cursed artifact, once owned by a 19th century opera singer in Vienna who'd made a similar pact, selling his essence for stardom only to meet a tragic end. Liam collapsed after the outburst, shaking and confused, insisting he didn't remember saying those words. The choir director, a kind elderly woman, suggested he see a doctor, thinking it might be vocal strain or a seizure. Sophia, bless her heart, was the first to take action. She was terrified but determined, bundling Liam into their old sedan and driving him to Massachusetts General Hospital the next morning. There, they met with Dr. Emily Chen, a middle-aged ear, nose, and throat specialist with a no-nonsense demeanor. She ran tests, laryngoscopy, vocal cord imaging, even an MRI to rule out neurological issues. The diagnosis came back as acute laryngitis, possibly from overuse, and she prescribed anti-inflammatory meds and vocal rest, but the pills did nothing. If anything, Liam's voice grew stronger, unnaturally so, and the whispers persisted. Declan, ever the loyal friend, stayed up late one night watching over him. Around midnight, Liam rose from bed in a trance, standing by the window and singing softly. His voice built to a crescendo, and suddenly, the glass in the frame cracked with a sharp pop, shards tinkling to the floor. Declan backed away, crossing himself instinctively. He wasn't deeply religious, but growing up in Ireland, you learn to recognize when something's not right. As the weeks turned into months, heading toward the end of 2008, the signs of demonic influence became harder to ignore. Liam's personality shifted. The once humble dreamer became arrogant, isolating himself from friends and family back home. He'd skip classes, spending hours alone with the book, transcribing those new, eerie compositions that appeared overnight. Sophia noticed bruises on his neck, like fingerprints from an unseen grasp, and Declan heard radios in the apartment turning on by themselves, blaring distorted opera that sounded like screams layered over music. It was clear this wasn't just a medical issue or a mental breakdown. It was spiritual warfare, the kind I've encountered in my ministry time and again. The devil preys on our vulnerabilities. Liam's insecurity about his talent was the crack Abraxas exploited. As we pick up the thread of this troubling account, moving into the early months of 2009, the grip of evil tightened around young Liam in ways that tested the bonds of friendship, love, and faith. By now, the demonic presence manifesting as Abraxas had firmly taken root, but it wasn't content to operate alone. In my years serving as an exorcist for the Archdiocese of Indianapolis, I've learned that demons often work in concert, drawing on accomplices to amplify their chaos. This case was no exception. Abraxas, that ancient entity blending Gnostic lore with biblical warnings of fallen angels, began to summon a companion spirit, one drawn from the shadowy intersections of Greek mythology and apocalyptic scripture. They called her Siren, a female force symbolizing deadly seduction through sound, much like the temptresses in Homer's tales who lured sailors to their doom, but twisted here with echoes from the book of Revelation, where deceptive voices herald the end times. Siren didn't announce herself with dramatics at first. She slithered in subtly, weaving her influence through Liam's voice during his solitary practice sessions. One chilly January evening, as snow blanketed the streets of Boston and the apartment's radiator hissed in protest, Liam was humming to himself in the bathroom mirror, steam fogging the glass. His tenor shifted mid-note, softening into a haunting soprano that wasn't his own, a lilting, irresistible melody that seemed to pull at the soul. Sophia, who was in the living room flipping through her sketchbook, felt an inexplicable urge to draw. Her hand moved almost involuntarily, charcoal scratching across the paper to form grotesque images, swirling vortices of notes twisting into infernal shapes, faces contorted in agony amid musical staffs that bled like wounds. She couldn't stop. Hours passed, her fingers cramping, until Declan came home from his part-time job at a local pub and shook her out of it. "Soph, what is this?" he asked, staring at the pages, filled with what looked like visions from Dante's Inferno. She blinked, disoriented, murmuring that the music had told her to create them. Declan fared no better. The next day, during one of their rare jam sessions, Liam had been avoiding them more and more. Siren's touch manifested through the guitar. As Declan strummed a simple chord progression to back Liam's aria, his fingers accelerated against his will, playing faster and more complex riffs until blisters formed on his calluses. He played through the pain, sweat beading on his forehead, unable to set the instrument down even as exhaustion set in. Liam watched with a detached smirk, his eyes glazing over as if savoring the control. Through him, Siren began to speak in that ethereal female voice, recounting her tragic fall. Once a celestial singer in the heavenly choirs, she had used her gift not for praise but to entice souls away from divine harmony, seducing them with promises of forbidden knowledge hidden in melody. Banished alongside others like her, she now allied with Abraxas to orchestrate what they term the symphony of chaos, a cacophony designed to disrupt the order of creation, turning sound waves into weapons that could fracture minds and spirits. The apartment on Commonwealth Avenue, once a cozy haven of laughter and creativity, transformed into a hotspot of unrest. Radios and stereos would flicker to life unbidden, even when unplugged, emitting static-laced operatic wails that sounded like a chorus of the damned. Neighbors complained of strange noises bleeding through the walls, high-pitched keens that set dogs howling in the building. Liam's sleep became a battleground. He'd mutter blasphemous arias in his slumber, twisting sacred hymns into inversions that mocked the Trinity, words like Gloria in Profundis instead of Gloria in Excelsis Deo. Sophia and Declan argued more frequently, their tempers frayed by the constant auditory assault. One heated exchange nearly ended their friendship when Declan accused Liam of faking it all for attention, only for Liam to retort with unnatural venom, his voice booming, "You strum like a child plucking weeds, why should I waste my gift on you?" Sophia, caught in the middle, pleaded for peace, but her own artwork grew darker, canvases depicting hellish orchestras where instruments bled and musicians writhed. By February, Liam had all but abandoned his studies at Boston University. His professors, initially thrilled by his progress, now noted his absences and erratic behavior, showing up late to class with bloodshot eyes, humming dissonant tunes under his breath during lectures. Instead, he took to street performing along Newbury Street, that trendy stretch lined with galleries and cafes. Dressed in his worn leather jacket against the winter chill, he'd set up with a small amplifier and launch into arias from the cursed book. Crowds gathered quickly, mesmerized by the otherworldly power of his voice. It cut through the urban din like a siren's call, drawing people from shops and sidewalks. Tourists snapped photos. Locals tossed bills into his open guitar case, and for a moment, it seemed like the breakthrough he'd always wanted. But the after effects were telling. Audience members would disperse, rubbing their temples, complaining of splitting headaches or a lingering unease, as if the music had planted seeds of discord in their thoughts. One woman even reported a panic attack hours later, triggered by the echo of his melody in her mind. The turning point came during a university showcase in early March, held in the Thai Performance Center, a modern hall with excellent acoustics, seating about 800. Liam was slated to perform a solo from Verdi's La Traviata, but as the spotlight hit him on stage, something snapped. His body went rigid, arms outstretched like a conductor summoning an orchestra from the void. The aria morphed mid-phrase into a chaotic blend of notes, siren's soprano intertwining with Abraxas's bass growl. The sound waves amplified unnaturally, causing the overhead lights to flicker and then shatter in a rain of glass sparks. Audience members screamed, covering their ears as the volume pierced like needles. Some fled the hall, others slumped in their seats, disoriented. The university's sound tech cut the mic, but Liam's voice carried on unaided, reverberating off the walls until security escorted him off stage. In the chaos, Sophia twisted her ankle, rushing to him, and Declan punched a wall in frustration, splitting his knuckles. Declan, despite his weariness, dark circles under his eyes from sleepless nights, refused to give up on his friend. Growing up in a devout Irish family, he'd heard tales of the supernatural from his grandmother, stories of banshees and possessions that weren't just folklore. He confided in Sophia that this felt like something beyond medicine or psychology. Together they convinced Liam to return to Street Cecilia's, hoping the familiar sacred space might ground him. But during a private meeting in the rectory, Liam's demeanor shifted again, his voice mocking the crucifix on the wall. That's when Declan reached out to Father Brendan Kelly, the 50-year-old pastor at Street. Cecilia is a sturdy Irishman with a warm, baritone voice and a no-nonsense faith honed by years in the priesthood. Father Kelly had experience with unusual cases back in Dublin, including assisting in minor deliverances, though he wasn't a full exorcist. He agreed to visit the apartment one blustery afternoon, carrying a worn Bible and a vial of holy water. What he witnessed confirmed his suspicions. As they sat in the living room, Liam suddenly seized up, his head tilting back as Abraxas spoke through him once more. "This vessel is mine. Your prayers are but whispers in the storm." Father Kelly, unflinching, sprinkled holy water and recited the prayer to Street, Michael watching as Liam recoiled, his skin blistering faintly where the droplets landed. During the episode, Liam inverted a hymn, singing it backward with a guttural roar that shook the coffee table. Father Kelly recognized the classic signs of possession, aversion to the sacred, preternatural knowledge. Abraxas quoted obscure Gnostic texts Father Kelly had studied, and physical manifestations beyond human capability. He didn't panic. Instead, he documented everything meticulously, knowing the Church requires evidence before proceeding. That evening, he contacted Cardinal C.N. Patrick O'Malley, the Archbishop of Boston, outlining the case in a detailed report. The Archdiocese, cautious as always, reviewed it swiftly and authorized a discreet rite of exorcism, emphasizing privacy to avoid scandal. In reflecting on this phase, as I often do with similar accounts shared among clergy, it's evident how the demonic escalates from oppression to full possession, preying on isolation and doubt. Liam's friends were crucial here. Their persistence in seeking help mirrors the communal strength the Church teaches. Evil thrives in secrecy, but light exposes it. We'll delve into the exorcism sessions themselves in the coming part, where faith clashed directly with the forces of darkness. Remember, in these battles, it's not human power that prevails, but the authority of Christ through his Church. As the exorcism rites commenced in the spring of 2009, the atmosphere at Street, Cecilia's church, grew heavy with anticipation and prayer. Father Brendan Kelly, drawing on protocols established by the Church's guidelines in the Ritual Romanum, set up the sessions in a secluded music room beneath the main nave, a space typically used for choir rehearsals, with its polished wooden floors, a grand pipe organ dominating one wall, and rows of padded chairs arranged in a semicircle. The room measured about 30 by 40 feet, insulated for sound, but now repurposed as a spiritual battlefield. Natural light filtered through narrow stained glass windows depicting saints like Cecilia, the patroness of music, her image holding a harp as if to remind all present that sound could be a vessel for grace or for malice. Father Kelly insisted on discretion. Only a select few were involved to protect Liam's dignity and prevent rumors from spreading through the parish. He enlisted Sister Kathleen O'Brien, a 38-year-old nun from the Sisters of Mercy convent nearby, who had a remarkable soprano voice from her days as a professional singer before taking vows. She'd performed in regional theaters across New England, but found her true calling in sacred music, using her talent to lead retreats and heal through song. Declan, too, was brought in, his guitar serving as an unconventional but fitting tool. Father Kelly believed that countering the demonic symphony required a blend of traditional rites and the personal elements that anchored Liam to his humanity. The first session unfolded on a rainy March afternoon, the patter of droplets on the roof providing an eerie underscore. Liam arrived escorted by Sophia, who clutched a rosary in her trembling hands, her face pale from weeks of worry. He looked gaunt, his once vibrant eyes dulled by the internal struggle, dark circles underscoring the toll. Father Kelly had prepared the space meticulously, a sturdy wooden chair in the center, reinforced with soft restraints to prevent injury during manifestations. Holy water blessed at the Easter Vigil the previous year, crucifixes on every wall, and a Bible open to Psalm 91, the one about dwelling in the shelter of the Most High. As Liam was seated and gently bound at the wrists and ankles for his safety, Father Kelly emphasized the group formed a circle around him. Sister Kathleen positioned herself near the organ, her habit neatly pressed, a silver cross gleaming at her neck. Declan tuned his guitar quietly in the corner, strumming a soft rendition of Amazing Grace to steady his nerves. Sophia stood by, her sketch pad tucked under her arm, ready to contribute in her own way if needed. Father Kelly began with a litany of the saints, his voice steady and resonant, invoking intercessors like Michael, the Archangel, and the Blessed Virgin. The air thickened almost immediately. Liam's head snapped back, his mouth contorting into a sneer that wasn't his own. Abraxas erupted forth, its voice booming like thunder rolling through the pipes. "Your chants are feeble echoes. My sound will swallow your prayers whole." The entity lashed out vocally, forcing Liam's tenor to climb octaves unnaturally, hitting piercing highs that made the crystal vases of holy water on a side table vibrate and crack, spilling their contents in rivulets across the floor. Ears rang. Sophia winced, pressing her palms to her temples as the sound drilled into her skull like a migraine amplified tenfold. Father Kelly didn't flinch. He'd seen this resistance before in his Dublin days, continuing with the rite of exorcism in Latin, commanding the spirit in the name of Jesus Christ to reveal itself fully and depart. But Abraxas wasn't alone. Siren joined the fray, her seductive timbre weaving through Liam's vocal cords like silk threads in a noose. She sang a mocking lullaby, a twisted version of a Gregorian chant, her notes coiling around the room to evoke despair. Listen to the forgotten song, she crooned, her voice causing Sister Kathleen to falter momentarily, tears welling as memories of her pre-vocation struggles surfaced unbidden. Declan, feeling the pull, gripped his guitar tighter and countered with a rock-infused hymn, blending electric riffs from his amp with lyrics from Be Thou My Vision, an old Irish favorite. The hybrid music clashed against the demonic harmony, creating dissonant waves that seemed to war in the air itself. Father Kelly nodded approvingly, pumping the organ pedals to layer in bass notes from Bach's sacred fugues, the pipes groaning to life and filling the space with counterpoint that pushed back the chaos. Over multiple sessions spanning weeks, as these things often do, requiring patience and persistence, the battles intensified. One evening in April, as cherry blossoms bloomed outside under a warming sun, Abraxas directed Liam's voice to shatter more than glass. A wooden crucifix on the wall splintered with a crack like gunfire, fragments embedding in the plaster. The demon boasted in guttural tones, drawing from ancient texts, claiming dominion over the vibrations of the cosmos, mocking the creation narrative in Genesis, where God's word brought order from void. Siren, ever the temptress, targeted Sophia directly, her melody evoking visions that compelled the young artist to sketch furiously during a break images of Christ on the cross, but with a harp strung with thorns, symbolizing redemptive sound. Sophia, fighting through sobs, held up one such drawing during the rite, declaring, "The music of the Lord is stronger than you." Her voice, though quavering, carried conviction, and Father Kelly incorporated it, blessing the artwork and using it as a focal point to remind Liam of love's power. Physical manifestations mounted, testing the group's resolve. The cursed music book, brought into the room for confrontation, began to smolder on its own during a particularly heated exchange pages, curling with acrid smoke that smelled of sulfur and ink, but refusing to fully ignite, as if protected by infernal will. Liam convulsed, retching violently, expelling not bile but scraps of blackened paper etched with musical notes, fluttering to the floor like charred leaves. Medical checks between sessions, arranged discreetly with a church-affiliated doctor, ruled out natural causes. His vital signs spiked erratically only during rites, heart rate hitting 180 beats per minute without exertion. Sister Kathleen proved invaluable, her soprano dueling Siren's lures directly. She'd launch into Ave Maria, her pure tones piercing the demonic veil, causing Liam to writhe and Abraxas to howl in protest. "Your light is but a flicker," it roared, but each session chipped away at the hold. Liam's true self flickering through in brief moments of clarity, whispering pleas for help. By late May, as Boston's weather turned balmy with hints of summer, Siren grew desperate, unleashing prophecies through Liam's lips during a twilight rite. With the sun setting in fiery oranges through the windows, her voice foretold a symphony of the apocalypse, visions of cities crumbling under waves of discordant sound, drawing from Revelation's trumpets but perverting them into harbingers of doom. The end comes not in silence but in eternal noise. She wailed, her notes causing headaches that bordered on nausea for all present. Father Kelly countered with Ephesians 6, the armor of God, while Declan improvised a medley of contemporary Christian rock amps cranked to match the intensity. Sophia, inspired, painted on the spot a hasty watercolor of the Lord as a conductor, baton raised over a heavenly orchestra, which she placed before Liam like a shield. These ordeals weren't without cost. Father Kelly lost weight from fasting. Sister Kathleen strained her voice to hoarseness, and Declan developed calluses that bled. Yet, their unity exemplified the Church's teaching on communal prayer. Evil divides, but faith unites. In my own ministry, I've seen how prolonged rites demand not just ritual, but relational endurance, echoing Christ's agony in Gethsemane. As the sessions built toward a climax, glimmers of hope emerged. Liam began responding to commands, his body relaxing post-manifestation, and the whispers in his mind quieted between meetings. We'll explore that final confrontation in the next segment, where the power of free will and divine mercy triumphed. Always remember, in the face of such darkness, it's the quiet persistence of prayer that turns the tide. As the rites progressed into early June of 2009, with Boston's parks greening under longer days and the Charles River sparkling in the sunlight, the team's vigilance never wavered. Father Kelly scheduled sessions thrice weekly, each lasting up to 3 hours, always beginning with Mass in the main church to fortify their spirits. He'd converted a small antechamber off the music room into a prayer alcove, stocked with relics, a fragment of the true cross loaned from the Archdiocese, and a medal touched to the tomb of Street Padre Pio, known for his battles against the infernal. Sister Kathleen arrived each time with fresh vocal exercises, warming up her soprano in the convent chapel beforehand, treating her voice as a consecrated instrument. Declan, balancing his job, practiced hybrid arrangements at home, fusing U2's spiritual anthems with Latin antiphons, his fingers flying over the frets to create uplifting barriers against the demonic din. Sophia, though not always present due to her classes, contributed remotely by mailing blessed sketches, depictions of musical saints like Gregory the Great, composer of Gregorian chant, which Father Kelly pinned around the room like spiritual armor. One memorable session occurred during a humid thunderstorm, the kind that rolls in off the Atlantic with booming claps that shook the church's steeple. As rain lashed the windows, Abraxas sensed the vulnerability, amplifying Liam's voice to mimic the thunder, rolling bass notes that vibrated the organ pipes into unsolicited hums. "Feel the rhythm of the abyss," it bellowed, causing dust to sift from the ceiling beams, measuring 20 feet high. Liam's body arched against the restraints, sweat soaking his shirt as veins bulged in his neck. Siren countered with a siren song of her own, a hypnotic dirge that evoked shipwrecks and lost souls. Her melody snaking through the air to induce drowsiness in the group. Declan's eyelids drooped, his guitar slipping from his grasp. Father Kelly, drawing from his training, splashed exorcised salt across the threshold, reciting the renunciation of Satan with added fervor, his Irish brogue cutting through the storm like a lighthouse beam. Sister Kathleen rallied, launching into the Salve Regina, her notes climbing like vines to entwine and choke the demonic harmony, while Declan shook off the lethargy and plugged in, blasting a rendition of How Great Thou Art, with overdriven distortion that made the amp buzz. The entities fought dirty, exploiting personal weaknesses. In mid-June, during a session under clear skies with birdsong filtering in from the church garden, Siren targeted Sister Kathleen directly, whispering through Liam's lips about her past life as a singer regrets over abandoned dreams, a failed audition that led her to the convent. "Your voice was meant for stages, not cages," she purred, her tone laced with false sympathy, causing the nun to pause, her hand trembling on the organ keys. But Sister Kathleen, fortified by years of discernment, responded with a defiant aria from Handel's Messiah, "He shall feed his flock," her soprano soaring with maternal warmth that drowned the temptation. Abraxas, enraged, forced Liam to regurgitate more artifacts, not just paper notes this time, but a viscous ink-like substance that stained the floor, bubbling faintly as if alive. The book, placed on a pedestal for direct confrontation, flipped pages wildly, its leather cracking like whips, exuding a chill that dropped the room temperature by 10 degrees Fahrenheit, frost forming on the windows despite the summer heat outside. Sophia's involvement deepened during these intensifying bouts. She attended more frequently, armed with a portable easel and paints, creating on-the-spot icons inspired by Byzantine art, Christ Panicrator with eyes that seemed to follow the possessed, or the Theotokos cradling a lyre, symbolizing redeemed music. One pivotal moment came when Siren prophesied again, this time with vivid imagery. "Behold the unraveling strings snapping across the globe, voices silenced in eternal discord." Her voice painted auditory hallucinations for the group, phantom echoes of crumbling cathedrals, choirs turning to screams. Sophia, undeterred, unveiled a fresh painting, a radiant depiction of the heavenly banquet from Revelation, where saints sang in perfect unity and held it aloft, declaring, "This is the true symphony." Not your lies. Father Kelly blessed it with chrism oil, and as he did, Liam's eyes cleared briefly, a tear tracing his cheek as he mouthed, "Help me," silently. Physical tolls mounted, mirroring what I've observed in my own cases. Unexplained scratches appeared on Liam's arms, forming cleft-like patterns. The air grew thick with ozone scent after manifestations, like after a lightning strike. Medical monitoring continued. Pulse oximeters clipped to Liam's finger showed oxygen dips to 85% during peaks, defying explanation. Father Kelly consulted with me indirectly through clerical channels, sharing anonymized notes that echoed patterns from Indiana possessions. The demons' aversion to Marian devotions, their weakening under prolonged exposure to the Eucharist. We emphasize hydration and rest between rites, with the team sharing meals in the rectory simple fare like clam, chowder, and soda bread, fostering camaraderie that bolstered their resolve. By the solstice eve, tensions peaked. The entities, sensing defeat, unleashed a barrage. Abraxas modulated Liam's voice to infrasound levels below 20 hertz, causing nausea and vertigo that had Declan retching into a basin. Siren overlaid ultrasonic whines above 20,000 hertz, shattering a nearby communion chalice replica. Yet, the countermeasures held. Father Kelly's Latin invocations, layered with the Asperger's me sprinkling rite. Sister Kathleen's counterpoint duets, harmonizing with recorded angelic choirs played on a portable CD player. Declan's evolving playlist, now incorporating Celtic psalms with electric flair. The book finally succumbed, partially its pages igniting in blue flames that didn't burn the pedestal, extinguished only by holy water, leaving scorched runes that faded like evaporating ink. In these grueling hours, Liam's humanity resurfaced, more often fragments of his Irish lilt breaking through, reciting childhood prayers like the Hail Mary, weakening the hold. The group's prayers extended beyond the room. Parishioners, unaware of details, formed a prayer chain, their intentions like invisible reinforcements. As I've always taught, exorcism isn't spectacle but sacrament, quiet, methodical reliance on Christ's victory over evil. This phase built inexorably toward the decisive encounter where free will would tip the scales. In the final telling, we'll see how that unfolded on a day fittingly dedicated to music itself, affirming that even in the depths, redemption sings louder. The culmination arrived on June 21st, 2009, the World Music Day, a global celebration of melody and rhythm that, in this case, became a divine irony. Boston awoke to a brilliant summer morning, the sun casting golden hues over the historic streets, birds chirping in harmony with distant buskers warming up along the Freedom Trail. Father Kelly chose this date deliberately for the final rite, sensing a spiritual alignment. Music's universal feast contrasting the demonic perversion they'd battled. The music room at Street, Cecilia's was prepared with extra solemnity, a white altar cloth draped over a table, holding the Eucharist in a monstrance, flickering candles scented with frankincense, and fresh holy water from the Jordan River, imported through clerical networks. The team gathered at dawn, fasting since midnight, to sharpen their focus, each member clad in simple attire. Father Kelly in his black cassock with a purple stole for exorcism. Sister Kathleen in her habit with a veil pinned neatly, Declan carrying his guitar case like a soldier's rifle, and Sophia with a satchel of completed artworks, her eyes resolute despite the shadows of fatigue. Liam was led in quietly, his steps shuffling, body weakened from months of torment weight down to 140 pounds, from his usual 175, skin sallow under the fluorescent lights. Yet there was a spark in his gaze, fleeting moments of lucidity that had increased over the prior weeks like cracks in a dam ready to burst. As they secured him to the chair now familiar, almost routine, the air hummed with expectancy. Father Kelly opened with the Veni Creator Spiritus, invoking the Holy Spirit's descent, his baritone blending with Sister Kathleen's soprano in a duet that filled the 30 by 40 foot space like a protective dome. Declan strummed softly in accompaniment, his calloused fingers weaving a gentle acoustic layer, while Sophia arranged her paintings around the perimeter, a gallery of redemption, from angelic choirs to Christ calming the storm, each brushstroke a prayer visualized. The entities sensed the endgame, erupting with unprecedented fury. Abraxas took the lead, contorting Liam's vocal cords into a symphonic assault, a barrage of overlapping tones that mimicked a full orchestra in discord, brass blares clashing with string shrieks, volumes swelling to 80 decibels that rattled the organ's metal pipes. "Join my eternal chorus," it demanded, the words vibrating the floorboards, causing dust motes to dance wildly in the sunbeams, piercing the stained glass. Siren intertwined her allure, her melody a velvet trap promising immortality through fame. "Sing with us, and your voice will echo beyond stars, unbound by frail flesh." The dual assault targeted vulnerabilities anew, Abraxas dredging up Liam's Dublin failure, mocking his mediocre warble, while Siren evoked Sophia's image, twisting it into a siren of betrayal, urging Liam to abandon love for solitary glory. But the team was primed, their countermeasures evolved. Father Kelly elevated the host, commanding in Latin, "In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti, depart ye spirits of discord." He circled Liam with the monstrance, the consecrated wafer's presence eliciting howls that warped into feedback loops like a microphone too close to speakers. Sister Kathleen countered Siren's lure with a soaring rendition of the Magnificat, her voice climbing to high C's that pierced the seduction, notes hanging crystalline in the air. Declan, amp cranked to match, launched into a fusion piece, Bob Dylan's Blowin' in the Wind infused with psalm verses, electric twang cutting through the chaos like a scalpel. Sophia stepped forward boldly, unveiling her masterpiece, a large canvas of the Lord, as ultimate maestro, conducting creation's harmony, with Liam depicted at his side, free and singing true. She pressed it against Liam's chest, whispering, "This is you, my love, not their puppet." The turning point hinged on Liam's will, as it always does in these matters. Possession thrives on consent, implicit or coerced, but freedom breaks it. Amid the sonic storm, Liam's eyes focused, his true tenor breaking through, and gasped, "No, I won't." Abraxas roared denial, forcing a crescendo that cracked a window pane, shards tinkling like broken scales. Siren wailed a final lament, her voice fracturing into echoes of forgotten areas, pleading for one more note. But Liam, drawing strength from the encircling prayers, shouted over them, "I sing for God and for love, not for you." His words, raw and unamplified, carried the authenticity of a soul reclaiming itself. Father Kelly seized the moment, sprinkling exorcise oil on Liam's forehead while reciting the final adjuration. "By the power of Christ, be gone." What followed was a cataclysmic release, a deafening resonance, like a chord struck on the universe's strings, vibrating the room's foundations. The cursed book, centered on the altar, burst into spontaneous flames, pages curling into ash that swirled upward in a vortex, dissipating into nothingness without scorching the cloth beneath. Liam convulsed one last time, body arching, then slumping, a guttural exhale escaping as if expelling smoke. Silence descended, profound and peaceful, broken only by the distant chime of church bells marking noon. Liam stirred, tears streaming, embracing Sophia as she rushed to him. "I'm sorry. I sang the wrong notes, but now I'll sing right." The team wept in relief, hugging amid the debris, shattered glass swept aside, the air cleared of oppression. Recovery unfolded gradually, as it must after such ordeals. Liam spent weeks in quiet reflection at a church retreat center in the Berkshires, a wooded haven with hiking trails measuring miles through pine forests, where he walked daily, humming simple folk tunes to rebuild his voice sans supernatural aid. Medical follow-ups at Mass General confirmed no lasting damage, vocal cords healed, though his range returned to natural limits, rich with emotion rather than eerie power. Back in Boston by August, he re-enrolled at the university, acing auditions with heartfelt performances that moved audiences to tears, not awe. Sophia and he grew closer, their bond forged in fire. They announced their engagement that fall, her ring a simple silver band etched with a musical staff, symbolizing shared melody. She channeled the experience into a series of exhibitions, her Harmony Redeemed collection touring New England galleries, proceeds aiding mental health charities. Declan, ever the steadfast mate, formed a band with Liam Celtic, grace blending opera, rock, and sacred elements into inspirational sets. Their debut gig at a Fenway pub drew a packed house, songs echoing themes of resilience, with Liam dedicating one to Father Kelly. For the man who taught me true music comes from the heart. The priest, in turn, documented the case anonymously in a journal shared among exorcists, including myself, as a testament to faith's triumph, how the devil's counterfeit gifts pale against God's authentic ones. Street Cecilia's choir welcomed Liam back, his tenor now a humble thread in the communal tapestry. Years on, the story lingers as a whispered legend at Boston University, cautioning students that talent isn't bartered, but nurtured through perseverance and grace. In my ministry, it reinforces a core truth. Evil may masquerade as enhancer, promising shortcuts to greatness, but it always extracts a price. True excellence flows from alignment with the divine composer whose symphony embraces our flaws. Liam's life, post-liberation marriage, a teaching career at a local conservatory, even a family with 2 children whose laughter fills their home proves that. No artifacts remain. The book's ashes were scattered in the ocean off Cape Cod, lost to waves that sing eternally. And so, in sharing this, I remind you, when darkness whispers promises, listen instead for the still, small voice of truth. It always prevails.